Hey, Vav. Hey,
Yeah.
Vav. One who teaches a Zav. I'm one who teaches. One who touches a Zav, a Zav, a Nida, or a woman who has given birth, a Mitzvah or a Midrash contaminated couch or seat, contaminates two and invalidates one. Once he separates and contaminates one and invalidates one. This ruling applies equally to one who touches and one who moves, one who carries and one who is carried. One who touches the zav fluid of a zav, or his saliva, or his semen, or his urine, or one who touches the menstrual blood of a nida contaminates two and invalidates one. Once he separates, he contaminates one and invalidates two. And this ruling applies equally to one who touches and to one who moves. Rabbi Eliezer says, providing that he carries it. One who carries the contaminated saddle of a zav, or one who is carried upon it, or one who moves it contaminates two and invalidates one. And once he separates, he contaminates one and invalidates one. One who carries an animal carcass or purification water of an amount sufficient for sprinkling contaminates two and invalidates one. And once he separates his contaminations and invalidates one.
Okay. Tes ochel min nivlas of tahor. Okay. So just briefly over here to refresh you on the way that that a kosher bird that died without shechita. So
Mhm.
chicken. Okay, chicken died without shechita. It does not have the tumor of a nevela in the same way as a behemoth. Okay. If you touch it or carry it, there's no tumor. Okay, the only way that a person gets tuma from the kosher bird nevela is by eating it, and that even while it's in his mouth is not tame. It's only when he swallows it, and it goes. So as it goes through his gullet, that's where the tuma is transmitted. Once it reaches his stomach, it's no longer a saucer, but he's already been made. So now, once again, this describes the situation where the tuma, where the nevela of a kosher bird was in his gullet. Ochel menivlas of tahor, v'hi beveis habliya, while it is in his throat. Metame shnaim uposel echad. He is in contact with the tuma, and he is now functioning as an electric distributor of the tuma. Um,
Mhm.
in order to be metame two and invalidate one. So he's acting as an avatuma. Hichnis roshela avir hatanur. Um, the word that next to that comes tahor should actually be in brackets because he obviously is not tahor. He's
Mhm.
the one who's carrying the tuma, but tahor tanur, right? So tahor hatanur. He does not transmit tuma in the airspace um, of the oven because that's not how nevela how the bird nevela actually conveys tuma. Okay, even if the bird itself had died inside an oven, it would not have contaminated the oven because it doesn't transmit by touch; it only transmits by swallowing. Okay, so while he's inside, he will transmit. So if he is inside the oven and he swallows it, that's not gonna affect anything. In fact, earthenware vessels, according to Kahati over here, he won't even be matame any earthenware vessels because they are matame only by airspace, and that's just it's like oil and water over here. They don't. That's not how the tumor works. But he will transmit tumor to, let's say, another person that he touch. Wait, what, to another person that he touches? I think so. Um, um,
Shawl,
yes.
Shawl, I'm sorry, I have to take this call just for a second. I'm sorry. It's okay.
Uh, okay. So we were talking about the way that the tumor is transmitted.
Okay, right.
Um, okay, so he will only be matame other foods, and if he'll be matame clothing and other kalim, um, and not because of the nivlas of tahor itself, because it doesn't. It only is matame b'beis blia, but the Rambam explains according to it that wait because so אפילו כשיהיה בבייס הבלי הבריא וראש ובסוף אווירה לא נאמר כיוון שאתה second תטמא סתנו, שנכנסת באווירו שמבוססת בלי והרבה שעולה נבלס off tahor, אינו מטמא Adam. Oh, okay, yeah. So a person who swallows the off tahor is not metame a person or klei cheres at the time of his swallowing. He's only metame other kalim at this time, not klei cheres like wooden kalim or metal kalim or the like. Um, and clothing. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Um, okay. Because he besoch piv, and while it's in his mouth, before he swallows it, ad sheyiv la'ena tahor. He's not
Oh,
at all. That's just like touching, and it does not convey any tumah. Okay. Now, next subject are other forms of tumah. Hanogea b'sheretz. B'shich baser with semen or tmei mei. So a person who is tame from the dead, who is himself an avatuma, Matzora b'mei sofro, and the Matzora while he is busy counting his days, b'mei chatas she'ein b'hem kedei hazaya. Right, if there's not enough to sprinkle, and there is a little bit, but there's not enough to sprinkle. If there's enough to sprinkle, then it is matame by carrying. If there's not enough to sprinkle, it's only matame by touching. Of a nevela of a merkav, or the nevela of a behema, or a merkav. Right, this is by touching. Remember, we said yesterday that a merkav has the property that it has to be carried in order to transmit that full mishkav tuma. The merkav, by touching it, it just goes down in degrees. Okay. While he is in contact, metame echad or posel echad, these things do not have the effect that electric effect. It's only all the things that we listed up until now that have the property of electric conveyance while he's in contact. So okay, things that are connected typically with a zav or a nida, the things that involve ishkav tuma. Okay, here's your general rule. Zaklal, kol hanogea be'echad mikol avos hatuma shebatorah. Your general rule is everything has everything that anything that comes into contact with one of the Torah tumas goes down a degree, right? It doesn't. There's no such thing as electric conveyance. Chutz mina adam, except for a person. Only a person has this property that he could convey tuma as an avatuma while he's in contact with an avatuma, and in brackets over here, and only with the tumas that we listed up until now in our perek. Perish, and as soon as he separates metame echad posel echad, and no matter what tuma it is, once he has separated, he is now an arishon letuma, and he will only be metame echad posel echad. Okay. Yud Aleph Balkeri Kamaga Sheretz. Okay, so the person who's had a seminal emission, he is keilu like he touched a sheretz. Okay, which is basically he is considered a rishon latuma, which means that a balkeri goes and shakes somebody else's hand, he doesn't make him tame. Okay, all that happens is that he will be matame chulin, he'll be matame, and the chulin will be able to be posel truma. Okay, kamagasher. To boil nida. What happens if somebody had relations with the nida? Now that's quite a serious thing because he actually takes on some of the aspects of the nida. Right, she's an avatuma. He also becomes an avatuma. Kitmei mace. He will become like a tame mace. In other words, that he is going to himself become an avatuma. Ela shechamor mimenu boil nida. But the boil nida is more stringent than somebody who's tame mace. Shehuma tame mishkav moshav tumakala. He also transmits tuma to mishkav and moshav, just like a nida. He will also transmit tuma to a mishkav or a moshav, but tuma kala, only a light tuma. He doesn't turn it into a mishkav. So if he now goes and sits down on a chair, the chair becomes a rishon. It doesn't become a mishkav, and so that if somebody else comes and sits on it, they'll also become tame. Okay, so that's where he is more lenient than the nida herself or the zav or zava or whatever. Okay, tumakala letame ochlen or mashkin. All that will happen is that he can be matame food. He cannot be matame kalim because he is Oh, so, he's matame the kli, or the mishkav or moshav. So even if he sits down on a chair without touching it, then that chair, if you subsequently put a loaf of bread on it, the bread will become tame.
Amen. Okay.
Okay.
And
All
beverages
right.
also, it says. Drinks,
Huh?
drinks also. Drinks also.
Foods and
Food
drinks,
and
yeah. Right. Okay. So that's it for today. We'll finish Zavim tomorrow and move on to Tvul Yom.
to Yom.
Tvul Yom tomorrow, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Nida.
No, Zavim, back to Zavim Aleph Hey.
You're right. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. Olive hay. If one had a single Zavim mission that is as lengthy as three missions, which is equivalent in duration to the time it takes to walk from God Yavan to Shiloh, which is equivalent to the length of time of two immersions and two dryings off. He is a full Zav. If he had a single Zav admission as lengthy as two admissions, he conveys tumor to couches and seats and requires immersion in a spring, but is exempt from the offering. The Yossi says they did not say that a single lengthy admission is counted as multiple admissions unless it is as lengthy as three. If one had if one had a Zav emission by day and one during the following twilight period, or one Zav emission during twilight and then the next day, if it is known that part of the admission is from the first day and part from the next day, the status is certain with respect to both the offering and tuma. But if it is uncertain whether part of the admission is from the first day and part of the from the next day, the status is certain with respect to tuma, but uncertain with respect to the offering. If he had a Zav emission on two consecutive days during the twilight, his status is uncertain both with respect to Tuma and with respect to the offering. If he had one Zav mission during twilight, his status is uncertain with respect to Tuma. And all can become Tomei through a mission of Zav, even converts and even slaves, whether emancipated slaves or emancipated slaves or unemancipated slaves, a deaf person, a deranged person, a minor, a castrated person, and a naturally sterile person. Regarding a tumtum and an androgen, we assign to them the stringency of males and the stringency of the females. They become tame through a discharge of blood like a female and through a minor mission like a male. And their tumor status is one of uncertainty.
Okay. Nida Vav Yud Aleph.
A girl who produced two hairs can produce either Kalitza or Yibum, and she is obligated in all the commandments stated in the Torah. Similarly, a boy who would produce two hairs is obligated to all the commandments stated in the Torah. He is eligible to be a Ben Tzorah Ma'ora from the time he produces two hairs until the beard grows around, which refers to the lower beard, not the upper one, on the sages spoke euphemistically. A girl who produced two hairs cannot perform min. Rabbi Yehuda says until the black hairs abundant. The two hairs that are stated regarding the red cow, regarding Saras affliction, and those stated elsewhere must be long enough to bend their top to their root. These are the words of Reb Ishmael. Reb Elazar says long enough to be caught by a fingernail. Reb Akiva says long enough to be removed with scissors. A woman who finds a stain is impaired, and she must be concerned for ziva. These are the words of Reb Meir. The sages say stains are not subject to concern for ziva. Ziva. Okay, that's it.
Okay, yeah, that's it. Hara Vav Daled.
If one positions his hand or his foot on vegetable leaves so that the water should pass over into the barrel, the water is invalid. If you position reed leaves or walnut leaves, the water is valid. This is the general rule. If it is something that is acceptable to tuma, it is valid. If it is something that is not susceptible to tuma, it's valid. Made a mistake. If it is something that is susceptible to tuma, it's invalid. And it's
Yes.
something that is not susceptible to tuma is valid. If one diverts a spring from the vat of the wine span into the water hole, the water is invalid for Zava, for Mitzorim, and for not constraining it as Meikatos because it was not filled in a vessel. Yeah. Para, one impala. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Zayin Aleph.
Five people filled five barrels in order to perform five sanctifications and then divided to perform a single sanctification, or if they filled the barrels in order to perform a single sanctification and then decided to perform five sanctifications, they are all valid. If a single person filled 5 barrels in order to perform 5 sanctifications and then decided to perform a single sanctification, only the last one is valid. And if he filled them in order to perform a single sanctification and then decided to perform 5 sanctifications, only the first one that he sanctified is valid. If he said to someone, sanctify these for yourself, and only the first one is valid, sanctify these for me, they are all valid.
Okay.
And tomorrow. If he gave the harlot wines, they are permitted. Wine, oil, flour, or any similar item that can be offered on the altar is prohibited. If he gave the harlot consecrated items, they are permitted. And if he gave her birds, they are prohibited. The logic would dictate if consecrated animals with blemish disqualifies are not subject to the disqualification of a harlot's wage, and a dog exchange, birds which a blemish does not disqualify, it is not logical to assume they are not subject to the disqualification of a harlot's wage and of a dog's exchange. Scripture therefore states for any vow to include a bird. Regarding all animals that are prohibited for the altar, their offspring are permitted. Regarding the offspring of a later says it may not be offered on the altar, but can come and say it may be offered. The Canina, the son of Antigonio, says a non-trefa that suckles from a terefa is qualified for being offered on the altar. And regarding all consecrated animals that became trefas, we may not redeem them because one may not redeem consecrated animals in order to feed them to dogs. There are laws permitting to items consecrated to the altar that are not applicable to items consecrated for the upkeep of the temple. And there are laws pertaining to items consecrated for the upkeep of the temple that are not applicable to items consecrated to the altar. Items consecrated to the altar can produce a temora, and we are liable on the account of pickle, nosa, and tame. This is not the
Their
this
offspring.
the offering of milk are prohibited from their redemption, and one who slaughters them outside the temple is liable, and we do not give them to craftsmen for their fee. This is not the case with things consecrated for the upkeep of the temple.
Okay. Okay, Baba Kama, base hey.
The bull that damages while on the premises without damagee, how is that? If it gored, pushed, put, lay down, or kicked in a public domain, he pays half the damages on the premises of the damages. Rav Tarfon said the full damages. The sages, however, say half the damages. Rav Tarfon said to them, seeing that where the Torah was lenient regarding Sheen and Regal in the public domain, the exemption is to be granted. The exemption is to be granted. It nevertheless dealt stringently regarding them in the previous premise of the damagee or the full damages be paid where the Torah deals stringently with Karen in the public domain and half the damages be paid is not the right we should feel stringently with it in the premises of the damagee that the full damages be paid. They said to him, it is enough for the inferred law to be as strict as that from which it is inferred. Just as the public domain, half the damages must be paid. So must half the damages be paid for the premises of the damagee. He said to them, I will not derive Karen from Karen. I will not derive Karen from Regal. Seeing that where the
I'm deriving Karen von Regal. That's what his logic is going.
I would
Yeah.
derive Karen from Regal. Seeing that where the Torah dealt leniently regarding Shane and Regal, vis-a-vis in the public domain, it dealt stringently regarding Karen, where the Torah dealt stringently with Shane and Regal, vis-a-vis the premises of the damaging. Is it not that we should deal stringently with Karen? They said to him, it is not enough for the inferred law to be as strict as that from which it is inferred. Just as the public domain, half the damages must be paid, so must half the damages be paid in the premises of the damagee. Man is always moored, well, unintentionally or intentionally, whether awake or asleep, and if he blinded another's eye or broke vessels, he pays the full damages.
One more.
If one leaves a jug in a public domain and someone else comes along and stumbles over it and breaks it, he's exempt. If he is injured by it, the owner of the jug is liable for his injury. If one's jug broke in a public domain and someone slipped on the water and was hurt by the shards, he's liable. If Yehuda says if he intended, he is liable, and if he did not intend, he is exempt. Okay. And Erev,
Yeah.
valid test. This is what they have said. The poor man may make an Arab with his feet. Says Reb Meir, we can apply this only to a poor man. Reb Yehuda says both a poor man and a rich man, and they did not say we may make an Arab with bread, except to make it easier for the rich man so that he may not go out and make an Arab with his feet. One of us set out for a town in which they may make an error, but his friend turns him back. He may go, but all the townspeople are prohibited. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir says, whoever is liable, able to make an error and does not, he is caught in between. One who went out of the Tchum, even 1 cubit, may not return. Rabbi Eliezer says 2 cubits he may return, 3 cubits he may not return. One who was overtaken by darkness outside the Tchum, even by 1 cubit, may not enter. Rabbi Shimon says even 15 cubits he may enter. For the purveyors do not give the full measure because of those who err. Okay.
Okay, and Atkan.
All right.
Okay.
Double yom tomorrow. Okay.